Hello FPL managers and welcome to an evening special edition of the Game Week 14 predicted lineups video from Fantasy Football Hub with me, James, and as always I'm joined by a very busy Ben Dinnery. Thanks Ben for cramming in this little greatest hits compilation of injury news ahead of Game Week 14. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, always a pleasure, James. You know how much I love these shows. Good. Quick turnaround is always an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And, the worrying concern for FPL managers, those little knocks and niggles that ordinarily players could run off, during the course of a normal training week, have potential implications in terms of time loss. So, they may rule them out of these midweek fixtures.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Guys, it's a little bit different tonight, predominantly because we don't have the Game Week 14 predicted lineups article live yet. We're still awaiting plenty of big press conferences. Tomorrow afternoon, we're recording on the Monday evenings on Tuesday. So that article will be out at some point tomorrow, I'd imagine early doors. Until that point, this video is going to be your main resource, I suppose, and premierinjuries.com as well, which is Ben's website that he runs. So it's just going to be us two face to face, Ben. That means that everyone gets to get a proper look at your Movember tash there. Look at it. I hope you're doing Movember anyway. I mean, I've assumed you're doing Movember.
It's looking absolutely outstanding.
That's 29 days worth, is it?
I mean, that it's poor. It's poor for 29 days. To be fair, like, I mean, if I shave the rest off, then make it go a little bit more prominent. And there's a lot of grey in there as well. You see,
salt
when you reach a certain vintage, then. What can I? The chicks love it.
Experience is the word they use, don't they, these days? Not old age. Okay, right, Ben. So I've picked out a couple of kind of key FPL players, and I think the best thing to do would just be to run through them if you're happy with that. So we won't go for every team like normal. And we will start with Arsenal as we would usually do in these videos because there is some news. I'm focusing here, Ben, on Bakary Saka, who was taken off early after a great performance, was rewarded with a goal. What's the update on Saka? Do we have one?
Not really. What we know, mechanism of injury, it looked as if you've seen in minutes before that he was actually brought off by Mikel Arteta. He was almost indicating to the top of his thigh, the left-hand side, that maybe indicates a hip flexor injury caused by, it could have been a kick, as in the kick in motion. And what I would say at this point, even if it was something really minor, given the quick turnaround between the games, of course, Arsenal play on Thursday, which may work in their benefit. It's still going to be a really sort of tight turnaround for Bakary Saka. I mean, we're coming into the festive fixture period, and even rushing a player back and potentially keeping them out for maybe just 2 or 3 weeks, you're talking a serious amount of games there. So it's worth managing carefully. I would suspect that Mikel Arteta, even though he's a massive importance to that team, won't take any risks. So we'll wait and see. We may not get an update before Tuesday's deadline, FPL deadline. So that may be one that managers either decide to take the risk and gamble, or, like I say, just try to make plan accordingly with maybe your bench.
Okay, yeah. Guys, off air, Ben was explaining that actually those 4 teams playing on Thursday night, we probably won't have press conferences for them prior to Tuesday's deadline, which you don't often get in FPL these days. So that's quite painful actually, and it means that Man United, Arsenal, was it Spurs and Brentford as well, Ben?
It was, yes.
None of them will have updates on. So it's going to be a bit of a guessing game this week. The joy of midweek fixtures. Let's move on to Phil Foden, another big injury and fitness talking point. As you rightly predicted in our last video, Ben didn't feature in the squad in Game Week 13. Does that improve his prospects of a Game Week 14 start, or does it make you more cynical that he's probably going to be out for an extended period?
I mean, he's improving. So, it's always very, very hard to second guess Pep first and foremost. And the difficulty with this City squad, you have so much strength and depth, and Pep can afford, to ease players back, to take them out the lineup completely. So that's a situation with Phil Foden. He's slightly ahead of where Jack Grealish is, but we've seen on Sunday, and I looked at the City game, and I'm looking at their upcoming fixtures, and I think for them it's going to be grinding out this 3 points, not necessarily about the performance as such, but getting those 3 points. And that was Sunday. That was a great example of that. Does Phil Foden make it? I think he stands a chance. Do I think he'd be thrown straight back in there? An educated guess would say maybe from the bench in this instance. Like I say, minutes from the bench with a possibility of a start this weekend. But, with any sort of minor knocks and niggles, sometimes, these injuries can evolve even further. Sometimes you can have little reactions, and that might, just influence decisions in and around, whether a player is going to return. So it is a fine balancing act. And I'm just trying to sort of maybe help people understand that, when you're deciding these decisions, it's never always black and white. And there are other influencing factors that definitely come into play.
Absolutely. Something that maybe is a little bit of an easier answer for you, Ben, is the status of KdB. The last I heard of him, he was suffering from the classic symptoms of COVID, losing his taste and smell, that sort of thing. Do we have any update on his progress? Will he be back on the pitch this game week?
Right, so there's a couple of things in terms of how we reacted to that, and we have different ways. Players who are asymptomatic, and that basically means they have no symptoms whatsoever, and they can train away while self-isolating. We know that KdB was suffering during the early part of testing positive, so he at least had 2 or 3 days where he wasn't really feeling great. Now he's much better. Now Pep said he needs to submit a negative test. The reality of the situation is to submit a PCR test, but it still could be positive. But as long as the score is over a CT score of over 40, which is an indication of the infection rate, they could be back. Now, like I say, even if he does return to the training ground, one, he isn't going to have a lot of minutes in training in those legs of his. So even though it's only been a short time, he will be slightly deconditioned. And ultimately, again, we don't know how it has really affected him. So there's other potential implications in and around that. Could he make the squad? I would say an outside chance, but only bench at best. More realistic, if he does come back, you'd be looking at game week 15.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to Chelsea. Very quickly, just want to discuss 2 key losses there, one of which actually returned to the field in game week 13, Romelu Lukaku. Ben, he got a little run out, didn't he, against Man United. Didn't make a huge impact, although he wasn't given a huge amount of time in which to do so. Do we feel with Lukaku now that he's back in that starting 11 most weeks, or do you think there's still a process here of easing him in, like we saw in game week 13?
Yeah, I mean, what we do know about Thomas Tuchel, he's a guy that likes his players in optimal condition at peak fitness, and he'll not take any shortcuts. There's no rushing players back, as we've seen with Lukaku being on the bench a few times now. So for me, that says we've got either Kai Havertz or Timo Werner who can be deployed in that number 9 role. And that's something that I would expect, again, with more minutes, increased minutes for Romelu Lukaku from the bench.
Okay, and any update on Kante? Certainly from a defensive perspective, Kante shores them up. Do we have any news on him?
Yeah, this is difficult. Again, given the quick turnaround, what we know ahead of game week 13 was the fact that he would have needed a miracle, in Thomas Tuchel's own word, to have made that game. We're only talking a couple of days after that. Is it another miracle? Is it a Christmas miracle, James? Who knows? But like I say, I think it's probably just a little bit short to get Kante out there, and fully recovered. I think more realistic would be game week 15. But, you never know with Kante. He does have, really good powers of healing, and he tends to recover quicker than most players.
Yeah, no stranger to the miraculous, I think it's fair to say. Jota returned 2 goals in game week 13. That's 3 goals now since Firmino's injury. Ben, can we Jota owners expect to continue to enjoy these hauls, or is a Firmino return maybe sooner than some of us had hoped?
Jurgen Klopp muddied the waters, I think maybe 7 to 10 days ago, when discussing Roberto Firmino, and as opposed to saying, well, look, he's ruled out, I think one of his comments was, I think it's going to be just a little bit too soon for him. That maybe give FPL managers hope that Roberto Firmino was maybe closer than certainly what I understand the situation to be. For me, the Brazilian's going to be in and around mid-December. I'm working on that 4 to 6 week timeline, closer to that 6 week period. Given the fact that he's already had that hamstring setback in September, where he spent a month on the sidelines, ordinarily you're talking about another 7 to 14 days on top of that. Couple the fact that you'll have Mane and Salah going to the African Cup of Nations. What you don't want to do is rush Firmino back, when those two players have gone from to have another recurrence or re-injury. So take the time, no need to rush him. And I still think Diogo Jota is locked in for the next few games at least.
I suppose there's also this factor of, even if Firmino is fit, does he necessarily get back into that starting 11, given how well Jota and Liverpool collectively are playing without him? I should specify, by the way, guys, that sometimes I will talk in a way that sounds like I almost want players to be injured, which of course is not the case. But I do also wish FPL points upon you, and ultimately Firmino's return would probably mean that the Jota goal scoring would dry up. Right, okay, let's talk about Luke Shaw very, very quickly. He was popular in game week 1, not so much anymore, Ben, but we should quickly touch on him. We saw Alex Telles in his place in game week 13. Does this look bad for Shaw, or can we expect him back quite soon?
Very, very difficult one, this to assess. Head injuries, you don't take any chances whatsoever. Had Luke Shaw not have been suffered that first concussion at the beginning of the international break in the Manchester derby, and then suffered that second concussion, I think we could have been looking at quite a serious situation. Second impact syndrome is very real, and although players are allowed back on the pitch with an enhanced care setting within around 7 days, that doesn't necessarily mean that the brain has been fully healed. So the worry is, if you suffer a second concussion before the brain is back to normal, then fatality is possible, although very rare, or certainly serious disability. So with regards to the Luke Shaw situation, this will be something that is monitored on a daily basis. Like I say, there will be absolutely no chances taken with him whatsoever. They have followed the protocol. This will be down to the individual, see how he's feeling, see how confident he is, see if he's had any kind of reactions. And hopefully, like I say, he's coming through all of those. But for me, like I say, even though you have these enhanced care protocols in place, it's the brain. The brain doesn't know whether you're just your average Joe on the street or whether you're an elite performance club. It doesn't really make it heal any quicker than that. And suffering back-to-back head injury as he did, it wouldn't surprise me if Luke Shaw was on the sidelines for just a little bit longer.
Okay, yeah, wouldn't want to take any chances. And confirmation today that Man United are under new management for the remainder of the season. So he could yet be a good FPL prospect. We'll have to see. Interestingly, of all of the teams, Ben, going into game week 14, it's Watford that I have the most players listed from here. Not only because they've been quite unfortunate with their injuries, but also because they are growing in FPL popularity. We should start firstly, I think, with Ben Foster. Incredibly popular FPL asset, mostly for his price. He's been starting ahead of Bachmann since I think about game week 4. Ben, what do we know about Foster? Why was he out?
So that's a groin-related injury.
Okay.
Unconfirmed or certainly denied it didn't happen playing for #United as part of their Movember 24-hour marathon game, which I have seen in aspects of the media. Understand, again, it's a minor issue. Certainly nothing serious or long-term, but given the fact that we're talking about just a matter of days, I would expect Bachmann to maintain his place in goal for Watford, certainly midweek.
Okay, popular budget forward option who has already racked up, I think, 5 goals and 5 assists this season. Very impressive numbers. Emmanuel Dennis, who again went off before the final whistle, Ben, with an injury. Do we have any update on him?
Well, it's 11 goal involvements in 12 Premier League appearances, so you're one short there,
Look
James.
Look at him, he's got the stats.
Yeah. I've got
Cheers, Jeff.
And yeah, so that looked to be an ankle related problem. There was a slight indication that he was limping prior to his withdrawal on Sunday. Again, that's something that will need to be evaluated and assessed over the next sort of 24 to 48 hours. So we don't really know. We don't really have a big handle on that one. If asked and if pushed, I would say I would be happier that a player suffering an ankle injury than going off under his own steam, as opposed to somebody who maybe had picked up a hamstring or a groin related problem. That certainly gives them a chance.
Okay, thank you. And finally, not as popular as he used to be, but important, I think, for that Watford attacking setup, Ismaila Sarr. What's the latest on him, Ben?
Yeah, so this was an injury that was picked up in that challenge by Donny van der Beek. Mechanism of injury sort of indicated that there may have been some kind of ligament involvement, potentially the medial. Now, we understand from the club that they don't know the full extent of the problem, although the knee structure in itself looks pretty sound and solid. So something that we're not looking long term, which potentially could have been in terms of a 2 to 3 month absence. But, given the fact that he was out of the squad on Sunday and wasn't really anywhere near, I don't think he'll make this one.
Rightio. You did someone who could make the Game Week 14 fixture, who's been out for a little while now, is Youri Tielemans at Leicester. Interesting implications, both for Jamie Vardy, who, of course, bagged himself a brace in Game Week 13, but also the growing in popularity James Maddison, who's been incredibly quiet this season, up until last week. He scored in Europa League, and now has a goal and a couple of assists to his name in Game Week 13. Tielemans, Ben, if you were a gambling man, would you put your money on him starting in Game Week 14?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's got to come a little bit sooner than him. I mean, he is way ahead of schedule. Initial timeline suggested that it would probably be in and around maybe mid-December. Brendan Rodgers says he is back on the training pitches. He's working really well. The game midweek will come too soon. Possibly this weekend to be involved in the squad. But, given the fact that he's missed a few weeks, the team, we've seen a recent upturn in form, like I say, a couple of players. James Maddison's probably one of the main benefactors of that. I think Tielemans is more likely to be introduced from the bench, possibly Game Week 15.
Rightio. Okay, Ben, thank you ever so much. I think we'll leave it there. I think we've covered the kind of the major potential absentees.
Leeds.
Oh, okay. Is there anything to say about Leeds?
I just thought it was worth mentioning that Luke Ayling and Patrick Bamford both started for the under-23s on Monday night.
Oh, wow.
So great news. So that gave a good indication that both of those players, as long as they come through that game unscathed, won't be too far away from a first-team return.
So that's this evening that they started?
They are, unless they've been withdrawn, they will still be playing at this precise moment in time.
So we won't see them in Game Week 14, but one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Lovely job. All right, Ben, thank you so Do you want to chant Leeds one more time?
Leeds!
Ben, thanks so much for joining me on this Monday evening. I know you've been incredibly busy and will be busy again tomorrow. Part of that busyness will involve keeping the article yet to be published. It'll probably be published tomorrow morning. It's the predicted lineups article on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Go and check it out. And like I say, that will be updated kind of live as news from press conferences, etc. comes in. Ben, have a good rest of your evening, mate. Thank you very much. I will speak to you probably ahead of Game Week 15. It might be another abridged version, but hopefully we'll have some visuals to bring you. You won't have to look at that Tash any longer.
Which should be gone anyway.
Yes. Thank the Lord. All right. Cheers, guys, for watching.
Cheers, Ben.